everyone, and thank you for coming to today's Play Attention webinar. My name is Gwen Sorley, and I will be your host today. I'm glad to see we have a large audience from around the world, and I really do appreciate you taking out some time today to learn a little bit more about Play Attention. There are a couple of things I'd like to mention before we get started. One is that we are recording this event, so at the end of the webinar, you'll receive an email that will have a link to the replay. That way, if you have any friends or family members or staff members who would like to review the webinar, they'll be able to do so at that time. Also, if you do have questions during the webinar, if you see at the bottom of your screen, just scroll your mouse to the bottom of the screen, you'll see that there's a chat feature. Just click that chat feature and type your questions in. That way I'll be able to address your questions as we proceed through. And please do ask your questions because your questions enhance everyone's experience. Also, you'll see that there's a raise your hand icon. So sometimes I'll ask you questions and I will ask you to raise your hand if you can relate or you understand. And if you do, you can just click that raise your hand feature or icon. Also, if at any time you lose your connection, don't worry. Simply log back in when your internet resumes and you'll be able to pick up the webinar at that time. Again, my name is Gwen Sorley. My background is in education. I have a master's in education, and I started using Play Attention back in 1996 when I was teaching second and third grades. So I've been using Play Attention for over 20 years now, with every age from about 5 years old all the way up through adulthood. So hopefully my experiences using Play Attention with lots of different individuals will give you a better understanding of how Play Attention works and how we can customize a program for you. Now, there is a bit of an agenda that we'll be going through today. We'll be discussing what Play Attention can do for you. We'll be discussing two key terms, executive function and self-regulation. We'll be talking about our NASA-inspired body wave technology, how the cognitive exercises within Play Attention help develop and strengthen executive function and self-regulation. We'll talk about customizing Play Attention for you because we know a one-size-fits-all approach will not work. So we take the time before you even start Play Attention to customize a program to suit everybody's different strengths and weaknesses. And then we'll discuss how to get started. I think it's important to start with who can benefit from Play Attention, because probably 95% of you here today went to your Google search and you typed in programs for ADHD, strengthening executive function, controlling impulse control, programs to help with memory or task completion, and you came across Play Attention. So you had an individual or a group of individuals in mind when you did this search. So if you would, please just type in that chat box who you're considering Play Attention for today. Are you considering Play Attention for yourself, your child, your grandchildren, your students, your clients, all of the above? Go ahead and type in your responses. And then at the end of this list, I'm going to share everyone's responses so we can all get a better idea of who's in our audience today. First, we do recommend that the student is at least 5 years old, but you can work on up through adulthood, or as we say, through 105. We say 5 years old to start because remember, in a lot of the activities, you're not using your hands at all. Just your ability to focus and concentrate moves the screen characters or starts the cognitive exercises. So it's really important developmentally that you're able to make the connections between what you're personally doing and what's appearing on screen. And that's usually developed around the age of 5. But the good news is we know it's never too late to learn. So you can work on up through 105. We do primarily work with children and adults who have attention difficulties. Now, a lot of times at this point, people will ask, well, do I have to be diagnosed with ADHD in order to use Play Attention? And the answer is no. The most important thing is that when we get to the area where we're talking about the different cognitive skills that we address within Play Attention, just make certain that those are the areas you would like to strengthen. If those line up, then Play Attention can be the right tool for you. We've had great success with individuals with autism, also traumatic brain injury, the aging population, because as we age, we do tend to lose our ability to pay attention, to follow through with verbal instructions, to remember where things are located. So we have a lot of senior centers and a lot of home clients who use play attention to keep these areas sharp as we age. It truly is for anyone who wants to improve attention, memory, task completion, all of the cognitive skills that we address within play attention. Because the great thing about the play attention system is when you put that body wave armband on your arm, we're only looking at your ability to pay attention. So you don't have to have a deficit in the area of attention in order to improve your own skills. This is known as peak performance training. People who use play attention for peak performance include NASA, NASCAR, the Women's Olympic Bobsled Team, even the Nuclear Power Agency up in Toronto uses play attention in that capacity. Now, their staff members or their athletes don't have attention problems, but because of their job or because of their sport, they have to be able to get in the zone very quickly. So they use play attention to help with that peak performance training. Thanks to everyone who's typed in who they're considering play attention for. Lee is considering play attention for herself. Shelly is considering play attention for her son. Nora is considering play attention for her clients. She's an ADHD life coach. James is considering play attention for himself and also his 2 children. Rebecca is considering play attention for her clients. Elsa is considering play attention for her 6th grade students. Elaine is considering play attention for her school system. She's an elementary school principal. And Maura is considering play attention for her clients and possibly herself. Great. Thank you to everyone who's replied so far. I really appreciate the feedback. And it's interesting to know a couple of you mentioned, I think James was one, he's considering play attention for himself and also his children. That's an important point because, although no one knows what causes an attention difficulty, it does seem to run in some families. We've had a lot of parents that I've talked to over the years who will say, I never knew what I was struggling with until my child was diagnosed, and then it all made sense. So we have a lot of parents who go through the program with their children, and I think that's a great experience for the family to go through this together. Because like I said, whether you have an attention difficulty or you just want to use it as peak performance, you can use it in that capacity. Kemis is looking at it for her children and also local schools. Excellent. Now, when we talk about attention difficulties, we often hear, well, he has an attention difficulty and also weak executive function. How many of you here have heard that term or that term has been brought up to you? Raise your hand. Remember, there's that little icon at the bottom. If you've heard the term executive function or you've been told that you or yourself or your clients have weak executive function. Okay, it looks like, many of you. So it looks like about half of our attendees have heard the term executive function. You can think of executive function as the CEO of your brain. Executive function allows you to control your attention, your emotions, and your behavior. It allows you to plan, prioritize, organize, avoid procrastination, and remain on task. Now, these are skills that you use every single day. However, they are areas that are typically weakest for people with attention difficulties. The good news is we know through neuroplasticity that the brain is moldable, it's shapeable. And if we provide you with the right learning tool and constant and immediate feedback regarding your attention, you can develop these skills despite your current wiring. And that's the very foundation of play attention. Play attention provides you with advanced technology designed to teach specific cognitive skills that strengthen executive function and self-regulation. And we're going to talk about how we do that through our neurocognitive training program. Now, this is the core. This is our body wave armband. And I'm actually going to show you that here. So this is that specially designed armband. You see inside the armband, there's the electronics. So that's an interface box right there. We slide that interface box in. We plug the sensors in. Now on the back, you'll notice that there are 3 sensors. Those sensors actually touch skin. So you close that Velcro up, slide this on your arm, and you're ready to begin. Those sensors, once they're on your arm, are actually monitoring brain activity that tells us how attentive you are. And that's what allows you to control all of the cognitive exercises just with your mind, or more specifically, with your attention alone. And you receive constant and immediate feedback regarding your attentive state. Now we know that this is a really important first step in the learning process, because right now, if you look at your child or your clients or your students and you say, I need you to pay attention, what do you typically hear back? Go ahead and type in the responses in the chat box. If you look at your child or your client or your students or perhaps your spouse and you say, I need you to pay attention, what do you typically hear back? I want to see if you're hearing the same thing that I was hearing as a classroom teacher. Yeah, a lot of you are hearing the same thing I was hearing. Shelly says, okay, wait. Arlene says, I was listening. Margot, Linnea, Adam, Michael, you're all saying, I am paying attention, right? And that's what I used to hear. I am paying attention. And they really think that they are. They just haven't developed what it takes for them personally to stay very focused to low stimuli activity for long periods of time. So what we're doing here is we're taking that very abstract concept of attention and we're making it concrete and controllable. Now you actually see your attention in real time. You feel what you're doing and you're allowed to practice those skills. So Shelly, for your son, it's going to be the first time he actually experiences what it means to pay attention. So the next time you look at him and you say, I need you to pay attention, it won't be, okay, wait. It'll be, oh, I have an experience. I've been there before, because he's seen his attention during the play attention sessions. Now he knows what that means. He knows what you're talking about. And that's where the real self-regulation and self-monitoring come into place, when we can make attention concrete. Because it's a very difficult skill to teach without technology. You know, we always teach our children and our students and our clients through immediate feedback. If you even think about when your clients or when your children were very young and they came to you, they were learning their ABCs, and your child might look at you and say A, B, C, D, and you'd say, good, great. And then she knew to move on, that she did that correctly, and then she moved on. That's how she learned, through that immediate feedback. But it's very hard to provide immediate feedback regarding attention, because your child or your client may be looking at you and you think he's paying attention, but his mind is off in the Bahamas somewhere. So it's very difficult for us, just as observers, to give immediate feedback regarding attention. So that's the real power of the body wave system, where it can actually tell you immediately when you're paying attention and when you're not paying attention. And then you're able to practice that skill. It's even difficult to explain what it means to pay attention without using a simile, right? Without saying, well, it's focusing, it's concentrating. So we just use the same word, a different word, but with the same connotation. So it's very difficult to explain what it means to pay attention. I like to use the metaphor of a concert. If you go to a concert, all the orchestra members are up on stage, right? They're all doing something different. Some are moving their papers around, some may be practicing a scale, some may be tuning their instrument. But when the conductor comes out and he raises his baton and then he brings that baton down, all of those musicians fire in synchrony. They all play at the same time. And that's what we know as music. The same is true for attention. Right now, there are billions of neurons firing in your brain at different times. But when all of those neurons fire in synchrony, that's what we know as attention. And at that moment, you give off a very specific, what we call attention signature. That's what that body wave armband is listening for. It's listening for that moment when all of those neurons fire in synchrony. And then that information is given over to the computer wirelessly via Bluetooth. And then that's how you're able to control all of the exercises just with your mind alone. Again, making the attention concrete and controllable. Really empowering, because if you've been told for years you can't pay attention, you never pay attention, why don't you pay attention? Within the first couple of minutes of using play attention, you're actually rewarded for paying attention. And that's very empowering. And that's how you're going to learn how to pay attention at will. When we go through school, or if you have a child going through school right now, or perhaps you're a teacher, most of the time the focus is on academics, right? We teach them how to read, how to write, how to do math, and that's okay. However, the difficulty with that is that many of our clients are average to well above average in intelligence. It's not that they don't know how to read. They know how to read. They know how to do math. They know how to do the science. It's just the process that's difficult. It's these cognitive skills that are weak currently and not allowing them to reach their full potential and truly show what they know. So we have to have a better plan than just teaching academics. We have to help develop those cognitive skills, which will lead to strong executive function and self-regulation so that everyone can reach their full potential. Now, when we talk about customizing your plan, there you have a couple of different options. One is a focus assessment. Focus is a norm reference test of attentional control, and it is computer-based. It takes about 20 minutes. So we'll send you the file and you can take focus at home or at your office, whatever is most convenient for you. And when the assessment is over, we get a full report back that tells us how you or your child or your client performed compared to the performance of his or her peers. And then we take that information and we'll like to meet with you for about a 30-minute block of time on a consult call with your personal executive function coach. And your personal executive function coach will go over the results with you, talk a little bit further about the different strengths and weaknesses, and set up your profile or your child's profile or your client's profile. When we talk about setting up the profile, we're going to be looking at a couple of different things. One is that we're going to select which cognitive exercises should be in that person's profile. And these will be the most important skill areas that need to be addressed. We'll also talk about time. We do recommend that everyone works for at least an hour per week. Now that hour could be broken up. It could be 2 30-minute sessions. It could be 4 15-minute sessions, depending on the individual. So once we set up the profile, when you log in or your client logs in to play attention, we have artificial intelligence called Sheer Genius. And Sheer Genius is going to select the most appropriate activities for that individual based on previous performance. Not only that, but Sheer Genius will set a mini goal. So Sheer Genius may say, yesterday you worked on attention stamina for a full 5 minutes. Today, and you were 72% attentive. Today, let's try 74%. And if you're able to do that, you'll earn a point, and the point will go into your reward system. So Sheer Genius does a lot for you. Not only does Sheer Genius select the most important activity for that day, but will also set goals to make certain that you're working towards higher levels of achievement and offer a reward system to help with the motivation. You know, I don't know if you saw a recent blog that we posted, and it looked at a study that was done. They went into the schools to find what the most successful strategies were when it came to helping students with ADHD. And they found out a few things were really key in their improvement and their development. One was one-on-one instruction. Play Attention provides one-on-one instruction. The second was goal setting. Play attention sets goals for you. Sheer genius is there to set those mini goals. Also, a reward system was important. We have that incorporated within play attention. Also, it said that any program that helps develop self-regulation, and that's exactly what you're doing with play attention. So we've taken the best of all methods and incorporated it and automated it into play attention to make certain you have the most comprehensive program available. If you'd like to review that blog, just type in blog. And I'll make certain that we follow up and send you an email with the link to that specific blog if you'd like to review it. Shelley asks, if a child is taking ADHD medication, should the test be done with or without medication? Shelley, that's a good question. And you're referring to the focus assessment. I would recommend that you take the focus assessment when the effects of the medication have worn off. So a lot of parents will do it first thing in the morning or on the weekend, just so we get that baseline. And then we want to make a note of that though, because we do want, when we do the middle assessment, about 20 hours into your training, and then at the end at about 40 hours after training for 40 hours on play attention, we want to look at that with the same situation. So if you took it the first time with no meds, then the second time we also want to do it not on medication. Now with your play attention training, you can use play attention whether you're on medication or not on medication. Medication may help some people by controlling symptoms. The difficulty is that medication does not teach any skills and it doesn't change behaviors. So we don't want to medicate and fail to educate. We want to really use that time to help them develop the skills that they lack. And that's what play attention can do. Play attention can teach the skills that medication alone cannot teach. So the only thing we recommend with your play attention training, Shelley, is that you're consistent in your time. So if you're going to work with your son 3 o'clock on Monday, work with them 3 o'clock on Wednesday. So just keep those times consistent. Good question. All right. Now, remember, focus is an option for you. And I say it's an option because sometimes I talk to parents. I just talked to a parent this week, and she said, you know, we don't need another assessment. We just went through a 3-hour neuropsych evaluation. We have a 10-page report. Can we just go through that? And we can do that. But if you want to do the focus assessment, these are the different areas we look at. The first is consistency. If you are lower than the norm in the area of consistency, this is usually our student who has a hard time starting and completing in a timely manner. So 15 minutes of homework is taking 2 or 3 hours. Or it may be that student where we notice, you know, yesterday he knew his math facts forwards and backwards, and today it's like he never saw them before. So there's inconsistency between work performance. You as an adult might see that as well, where you think, I start a million things, I finish nothing. Or perhaps you are very inconsistent in your personal work performance as well. So if this is true, if you're lower than the norm in the area of consistency, and this is a difficult area, then there are certain activities within play attention we're going to put into your profile. One being attention stamina, also time on task, and the academic bridge. And we're going to talk about those a little bit later. Performance, if you're lower than the norm in the area of performance, this is usually our daydreamer, where you look at your student and you think, wow, she's just in her own head. Or maybe it's that that person who has a hard time with processing speed. It just takes them a little bit longer to process information. Or maybe your son is having a hard time following through with multiple step verbal instructions. That would be lower than the norm in the area of performance. Again, we have lots of activities that we'll put into place in order to address that. Impulsivity. This is a huge part of executive function, that inhibitory control. How many of you can relate to this? Raise your hand if you can. Your child did something and it was something wrong and there was a consequence. You talked about it. You knew that he understood he shouldn't do that again, and the consequence was put into place, and yet 15 minutes later, he did the exact same thing. Click that icon, raise your hand if you can relate to that. Any of you can relate to that, where there seems to be this division between what they know and what they do? A lot of you are saying yes to this. And that's that inhibitory control, where we're able to teach them how to stop, think, and then act. About half of you say you can relate to that. Absolutely. And we see huge improvements in the area of inhibitory control, because in every single play attention activity within the intermediate and advanced skill options, we actually incorporate impulse control. Also, distraction. We look at how you perform when there are visual or auditory distractions in the environment. If this is a hindrance to you, if you really cannot perform when there are auditory or visual distractions, then we're going to put certain things in place during your play attention session to help you learn how to stay focused and filter out all of that unnecessary stimuli. So this is what we'll do first. Again, we're going to go through that assessment. You can do the assessment and then your consult with your personal executive function coach. All of you here, whether you're a home client or a professional client, will be assigned a personal executive function coach to assist you every step of the way. So you'll go through the focus assessment, then that consult with your executive function coach to set up the profile for each individual. Now you see here, this is our main menu screen. These are all of the different cognitive skill activities that we address within play attention. And this is really important because you'll notice here that every single activity has an educational correlate. They're played for a reason, to help develop a very specific skill that lays the foundation for strong executive function. And we're going to go through these different skill areas. Now, these are the areas that we're going to select for each person's profile, depending on their different strengths and weaknesses. The first 6 activities come standard in the core, so everyone's going to receive the first 6. The remaining here are options for you that you can pick and choose from at any time. But as a way of saying thank you for attending today, you can select up to 2 of those add-on modules for free today. And you can select them now, or you can select them after you do the focus assessment, 2 months down the road, whatever's best for you. But you'll have 2 available to you. Now, remember also, each activity has a beginner, intermediate, and advanced skill option. And in the intermediate and advanced skill option, we tie in task switching and distractors, impulse control, and longer time challenges. And Sheer Genius is going to track when it's appropriate for you to graduate from beginner to intermediate and then to advanced. Now, James asks, what is the feedback? Is it visual or auditory? It's a little bit of both, but really, primarily, it's visual. And I'm actually going to show you a video that will demonstrate the feedback. This is Ty. A lot of times at this point in the webinar, people want to see a child or a student actually using play attention. And all of our students are in school right now, so I did the next best thing. I went into a local learning center and I interviewed Ty. Ty is 9 years old, and at this point, he had been using play attention for about 6 months. And he's going to demonstrate and explain to you the feedback when he's working on the first activity that you see here, attention stamina. So I'm going to switch my screen share here so that you'll be able to see Ty as he demonstrates and explains attention stamina.
Today? Sure. Why not? That's what I'm here for, isn't that true? As you can see, there's a ton of games.
What are you going to play today?
I'm going to play attention stamina.
Okay. And which character are you going to be?
I want to be the submarine.
And how does this game work?
It works all with your mind, and if you're paying attention or not, if you're not paying attention, he'll go high. If you are, he'll go low. And we want him low.
Good. So how are you going to get him low?
By paying attention into all of your mind.
Good.
Now let's play. Enjoy the video. Now I want to start fidgeting around a little bit. What should we do tomorrow? See, did you see him go up? That's because I wasn't paying attention. Now I'm going to try to bring him back down. And it's all with your mind. Just remember that.
Notice now he's able to move that character down to the bottom of the ocean just with his attention alone. And he gets that immediate feedback. Okay, hopefully you were all able to see that video. And you notice that he had the character going at the top of the screen. And as soon as he was focused and paying attention, he was able to push that character down to the bottom of the ocean just with his attention alone. If he got distracted, and he demonstrated distraction as fidgeting, right? As soon as he started to fidget, that character started to float up because he was no longer as attentive. And then he had to control that behavior in order to push it back down to the bottom. But if you are distracted by your daydreaming, it could be daydreaming. It could be someone walks into the room and they can't filter that noise. Whatever the distraction may be, it's going to cause that character to start to float up. And then you have to control that daydreaming, control that fidgeting or behavior in order to focus back in and push it back down to the bottom of the ocean. Now, Jody has a really good question. What do the games look like for teenagers? The activities themselves are all the same. You notice that the graphics are very simple. They're very, very low stimuli. And we do this for a reason. And they're the same whether you're 6 years old or 66 years old. Because if you have an attention difficulty, and raise your hand, click that little icon if you can relate to this. Your child, and maybe Jody, you can relate to this. Your child has an attention difficulty, but he can come home and play his Xbox or Minecraft or Fortnite for hours and never move, where it's hard to draw him away from it. How many of you can relate to that? Okay. A lot of you are saying yes, including you, Jody. Absolutely, because it's a matter of stimuli. We hear so much about attention deficit, and that's really a misnomer. There is no one with a complete deficit of attention. Usually they have great attention. It's just scattered over a variety of things. Or in a situation such as a video game or YouTube, it's so highly stimulating, they are wired to pay attention to high stimuli. So we don't need to teach your teenager how to pay attention to high stimuli. They can already do that. What we need to help them develop is what's more difficult, and that's how to pay attention to low stimuli, much like that classroom teacher who cannot possibly compete with that high stimuli. So that's why the graphics for everyone is kept very simple, very low stimuli, so that they can learn how to pay attention to that low stimuli at will. Jody, let me know if that makes sense to you or if you have more questions. That was a really good question. And, also it's important to note, though, that we have an auto adjuster within our software. So when your child or your client has that armband on, the bar is set to where that individual person's best attention level is. If they're able to reach or exceed that, they're able to push that character down to the bottom of the ocean. If they get distracted, then of course the character will respond. But if they're able to keep that down there for a given number of seconds, then we raise the bar on the background, making it just a little bit harder to focus in and get the character to move in the right direction, or the cognitive activity to start. But the opposite is true too. If they are getting a little fatigued and they're not able to reach that same level of attention, then we bring that bar back down to where they were last most successful, and then gradually build them up. So there's this challenge algorithm where we keep it at a challenging yet success-based pace, because we know this is best for learning. If you're 100% successful, you're not going to learn anything. But if you're struggling and you're frustrated, you're not going to learn either. So that's why we keep it at this challenging yet success-based. So another way how the program automatically adjusts to your specific needs. Shelley says, how does the armband unit detect brainwave energy when it's coming on the arm? Why isn't it on the head? Well, Shelley, that's a really good question as well, because usually when you see a system monitoring brain activity, you see something on the head, like Shelley's saying. And even the first 14 years of Play Attention, we had a helmet design. And that's because that electrical signal that comes off the head that indicates attention, it's so small, it's so minute that it's easiest to monitor if you're close to the source, which obviously is the head. So that's why everyone has something on the head. The difficulty with that, and this is what we have found over the years of all of our work that we've done with students over the past 20 plus years, is that people don't like to have something on the head, especially if you're working with individuals with attention difficulties or ADHD or autism. They have sensory issues and they don't want something on the head. It's uncomfortable, it's invasive. So we've worked very hard to improve the client experience. So now we've advanced the technology to a point where we can monitor that same exact brain signal, but we do it through the body. Because as you move further from the source, Shelley, that signal doesn't disappear. It just gets harder to tune into, because you have to filter out all of the noise that occurs from the head to where you have it placed on the arm. You have to filter out heart rate. You have to filter out muscle. You have to filter all that out. So we have special algorithms and filtering that allows us to filter out all that noise and still pick up that same brain activity. And if you'd like a little bit more information on the technology itself, we have a research paper done by Dr. Insoo Kim, who was a lead engineer at Samsung. If you would like that paper sent to you, just type in Samsung and I'll send you that paper. Also, there's a great interview done by the founder of the company at the TransTech conference just a couple of months ago. And it's a really good article or interview that talks about the technology and how it's evolved over the years. So if you're more interested on the technical end, just type in TransTech or Samsung and I'll make certain that you get an email follow-up with that specific information. Good question. Shelley, let me know if you have more questions on that. Okay. Excellent. So now I want to share the other videos with you. I'm going to mute this here and share with you the other cognitive skill areas. So remember, this was the one you just observed, attention stamina. This helps develop the area of being able to stay focused to very low stimuli at will, much like being able to pay attention to the teacher in the classroom or the boss in the workplace. Can everyone see the activity on the screen right now showing you the dolphin? This is the intermediate skill option where you actually notice that there are some more visual distractions and also task switching and impulse control incorporated into this particular activity. The next activity you see here is visual tracking. Visual tracking is a great one for your child or your student. If the teacher has ever said to you, you know, he does great when I stand right next to him, but as soon as I walk away, he's out the window and out the door, and then he has that diffused attention where he's paying attention to a little bit of everything. So we work on staying very focused and visually tracking that teacher as he or she moves about the classroom. The next area we address is time on task. How many of you can relate to this? Raise your hand if you can. Your child comes home and she has a 15-minute homework assignment, and that homework assignment takes 3 hours. Or you have parents coming to you and they're saying, you know, I know you're giving just half an hour of homework, but we're spending all night, every night on homework. Yeah, a lot of you are saying you can relate. Or maybe you're an adult and you think, I start a million things, I finish nothing. This is a great program to help you learn how to start, stay on task until completion. And it's really important to note here that in the first activity, attention stamina, that goes on in the beginner level for 5 minutes and then stops. But on this particular activity, when we're working on task completion, this activity will go on and on and on until you complete your task. And that's to mentally move that little forklift driver. Your mind is actually powering that forklift driver, driving that forklift across the screen, picking that crate up on the left-hand side of the screen, and then driving it over to the flatbed truck. If you get distracted, and remember, distraction can be a self-distracting behavior, nail biting, chewing on your shirt, could be just daydreaming. It could be you're distracted by some noise. Immediately, that forklift driver will freeze and wait for you to focus back in. So you're going to notice that if you're procrastinating, if you're fidgety, if you're daydreaming, this task, this activity can take you 12, 13, 14 minutes. But as you get better at starting and staying on task, this activity is going to consistently take you 7 minutes or less. So now 15 minutes of homework is going to take 15 minutes and not 2 or 3 hours. Now, the next activity we work on is short-term memory. This will help you remember dates, names, facts. And you'll notice here, you're not moving anything across the screen, but look in the top left-hand corner of the screen. That's our attention thermometer. Once you're focused and paying attention, that attention thermometer becomes a full red, and then the activity will start. And then you'll be able to get a series of lights and tones. And you have to input that same sequence using the corresponding arrow keys. So this one you do use your hand, but it's all brain enabled, meaning you have to be very focused in order to start the activity. So you can only practice short-term memory while in a very attentive state. Discriminatory processing is the same way. You have to be focused in order to start the activity. Once the activity is started, you're going to practice staying focused on your task and deciding quickly what to do with different bits of information, what you need to pay attention to, and what you need to filter, all the while staying very attentive and controlling your impulses. This one really challenges that impulse control. Now, the next activity that's called Academic Bridge is where we really focus on transfer and generalization. This one, you're not going to be looking at the screen. On this particular activity, you're going to be doing reading, spelling, math. If you're an adult, you might be reading a user's manual or doing some databasing. Now remember, this body wave armband is not monitoring where your eyes are. It's actually monitoring how attentive you are. So if your child is paying attention to his reading, the computer is going to say, good, great. If his mind starts to wander, he's going to hear focus. So immediately he knows he's no longer as attentive on his academic work in order to pay attention to it and process that information and finish it in a timely manner. So it's no longer mom keeping him on task. The computer is telling him when he's paying attention and when he's not paying attention. So in this activity, we're working on transfer and generalization, taking all of those skills you're learning in play attention and applying them to your academic work. Really important in the process. Now, these first 6 activities, as I mentioned, come standard in the core. These remaining 6 are simply options for you that you can pick and choose from. These include auditory processing. This is the first one you're going to see as one of our add-on modules. Auditory processing is a great one if you say, go to your room, put away your sneakers, bring down your jacket. You want him to be able to follow through with that without you constantly reminding him or redirecting him. So auditory processing helps with following through with multiple step instructions. Hand-eye coordination. Hand-eye coordination helps with handwriting, keyboarding, catching a ball. So if you've noticed that you or your students or your clients have a hard time with small motor control, this is a great one to help develop that. The next area is motor skills. Motor skills is very good for those individuals who have more bumps, bruises, accidents than their peers. This really helps develop that mind-body coordination. So if they're having a hard time with mind-body coordination and gross motor control, this one you have to stay very attentive while imitating those motor movements. Social skills. Social skills is really good for those individuals who have a hard time with peer relationships. This helps develop that ability to understand and recognize social cues and then respond appropriately. Because a lot of times the difficulty with social skills is just that they're missing those cues. Spatial memory. Spatial memory helps remember where things are located. So if your daughter gets her homework done on time, she'll actually remember where she placed the homework so that she's able to turn it in the next day. Or if you throw your car keys out on the counter, you'll remember where you put them 2 hours later when you have to go out. Working memory is a higher level thinking skill. This helps with reasoning, evaluating, and comprehension. So it's taking in that information, manipulating that information in some way, and then giving a response, much like a mathematical word problem. We also have first grade and second grade addition and subtraction facts. So this goes back to the individual who may be inconsistent, right, on those math facts. So if you have a child who's really struggling to remember facts, especially math facts, that's a great program. And finally, Lotus, which is our mindfulness program. You know, probably many of you have read recent research that tells us that mindfulness techniques are really good to help control the symptoms of ADHD. However, the difficulty with that is the very definition of mindfulness is being able to keep the mind or keep the brain on only the present moment. So we can't just look at our child or our spouse and say, now I want you to practice mindfulness, because that's the direct opposite of the ADHD mind. So we have to give some type of accommodations to help them learn how to be mindful. So Lotus actually gives you a visual representation of what it means to be in the now. If you are in the present moment, if your mind is only on the present moment, you're able to actually start to move one of the petals of the flowers. If you start to think about what's for dinner, what time do I have to pick up the kids, what do I have to do on Saturday, my grocery list, then your mind is no longer in the present moment, and that petal will start to close. And you have to bring your mind back to the present moment in order to open it again. So again, we're helping you develop those mindfulness techniques, which truly do help with not only your attention and focus, but your relaxation and decreasing your anxiety and stress levels. So you see here that all of these cognitive areas come together to actually help develop executive function and self-regulation. So we know that it's very important to work in these areas, and different areas of executive function. One, for example, is why won't this stop here? Let me stop that. One of the areas of executive function, for example, is organization. Now, we don't have an activity called organization. However, in order to be organized, you have to be able to pay attention. You have to be able to start and remain on task until completion. You have to remember the information, filter distractions, control your impulses, work on your processing speed, and all of those skills are developed within every single session within Play Attention. So you see how we build up those cognitive skills that lay the foundation for strong executive function. Now, let me go back to my other screen here so that we can go to the PowerPoint. Okay. So here are all the cognitive areas that we just talked about. Now, I know, like we discussed, a lot of you went to your Google search and you typed in programs for ADHD and attention training, memory improvement, executive function training, and you came across Play Attention, but you probably came across a lot of different programs. And sometimes it's hard to know how one program is different from another because we get inundated by so much information. So this is the main difference between Play Attention and any other program available. Play Attention is the only program that integrates that feedback technology with cognitive skill training and behavior shaping. So if you're going to work on attention or memory or auditory processing, you have to be in your peak attentive state in order to even start the activity. You have to be actively engaged in order to practice these skill areas. So that is really essential. And that's what makes us different from anyone, because you can find other feedback-based technologies. You can find lots of different cognitive exercises, or what you hear a lot about as brain games, and lots of different behavior shaping programs. But Play Attention is the only program that takes the best of all teaching methods and incorporates it into one package to make certain you have the most comprehensive program. How many of you do want to work on helping your child or your clients control self-distracting behaviors like fidgeting or calling out or nail biting, chewing on their shirts? Raise your hand if you do want to work in those areas. Okay, many of you do, some don't. And if you don't need to work on these behaviors, then we can turn that component off in your profile. However, for those of you who said you do want to work on these behaviors, it's so powerful. Because remember when you saw Ty, he had that character at the bottom of the ocean, and then he actually started to fidget. Immediately that character started to float up. So now he has a one-to-one correlation on how that behavior affects his attention. And then you're going to use that to help him learn how to control those behaviors, not conducive to good attention. Sheer Genius is actually going to set behavioral objectives based on that. So the behavior shaping is really very, very powerful. And Tufts University School of Medicine wanted to know, is this integration important? The integration of feedback technology with cognitive skill training and behavior shaping, is that important? Or can we just give you a series of cognitive exercises and get the same results? So they went into the Boston Public School District, and they had 3 different groups of students, all identified as ADHD. The first group received full integration, so they used Play Attention. The second group received just cognitive exercises, so no feedback technology and no behavior shaping, just brain games, much like Luminosity or Brain Train. The third group received no intervention at all. That was their control. And at the end of the study, the students in the Play Attention group were the only students that showed global improvements in all areas, including academic, social, behavioral, and executive function. They were also the only students that did not have an increase in medication if they started the study on medication. They had an average decrease. The other 2 groups had an average increase. And they were the only students that tested out as non-ADHD. So really important studies. If you would like to see the full reports and studies, just type in Tufts in the chat box and I'll make certain that you also get a copy of that. So now Play Attention offers not just the neurocognitive training program, but lots of different resources to help support every area. So you'll have the neurocognitive training program, the mindfulness training that we discussed, the full behavior shaping program, if you're working on behaviors. We have a great family management app called Nanny's Circle that will help you start incorporating these skills into your day-to-day life. We provide parent training and support. We also have exercise and nutrition guidance on our social media every week, because we know as you start to develop new skills, it's important to have a healthy lifestyle to support those new skills. And of course, your personal executive function coach. As I mentioned, all of you will be assigned a personal executive function coach to assist you every step of the way. So that person will, remember, do that consult with you, set up your profile, do a practice session to make sure you're real comfortable with everything before you start working on your sessions. And then from that point, you call or email or send your data to that person. That person is here to answer all your questions for as long as you're using Play Attention. And that support is free and unlimited for as long as you're using the program.